In this video, I'm going to show you how to can dry beans. Right here, we have some dried black beans. Here we have some dried pinto beans and some dried navy beans. All of these are organic beans from Azure Standard. I will have a link in the description box below if you want to check them out. The first thing we need to do when we go to can dry beans, and you also do this if you're just cooking dry beans to eat for supper that night, but the first thing you need to do is you need to sort through your beans. Okay? So sorting is pretty easy. You just dump your beans out. Push them off to the side, and I like just to take the palm of my hand and get a few, move them over to the side, and spread them out with my fingers, and then I just look for any rocks or debris. I personally also get rid of the little beans that are split in half. I get rid of any imperfections, any ones that might be moldy. You're looking for anything that doesn't belong and anything that does not look perfect. Okay, so those are done. Okay. And here is a little bean. And here is a tiny little bean. It is hard and really, really small and very shriveled looking. I'm discarding that one as well. So I'm going to continue separating the good beans from the bad beans. I'm going to continue on with this pile. Then I'll do the black beans and the navy beans as well. Okay, so right here I have all of the pinto beans sorted out. This is what I'm keeping. And here I have the ones that I discarded that I do not want in my canned beans. Most of these are just split in half. You can still eat them, they're fine. I just personally don't want them in there. And then, like I said, you're looking for any little rocks or debris that does not belong. You also need to look for any beans that might have bug holes in them, as well as bugs. Also look for any beans like I showed you on this little one here a while ago. You want to look for any little beans that are just not quite right. And then if you have any question about if a bean has mold on it, of course you'd want to get rid of those. So anything that might look like it has a little bit of mold on it, you want to get rid of that. So all of this here, this will be tossed outside. Here are the black beans that I am discarding. You can see some of them are split. Some of them have a little discoloration that I don't quite want. And then you also have to look out for little bug holes. I don't think this is a bug hole because it's right where the two halves meet and join up. But I saw that and I did want to let you know to also look out for bug holes. Okay, so we sorted through our navy beans, and here are the navy beans that I am discarding. Okay, so again, we have some split in half and little pieces of the bean, but also this one right here, right there, if you look, it has a slight green color to it, so I'm discarding that one. If you look at this one right here, it doesn't look too appetizing. It has a little orange and brown specks on it. That's not supposed to be there. Like, this is not a different variety of bean. It just doesn't look like a healthy bean. What else? Okay, this one here. This one here, it has some discoloration as well. It just doesn't look good. All right, so these will be discarded. Now the next thing we need to do is rinse our beans. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna add some water to these bowls and I'll be right back. So I have just added water to these beans. I did not measure the water out, okay? I just went ahead and covered with water and it's probably covering it by about an inch. What I'm about to do next is somewhat controversial. When you are researching how to can beans from the dry bean state, you will find two different paths, okay? I'm not following either of those paths. I'm kind of merging the two and doing what I think makes sense. I just wanted to make you aware of that because what I am going to do is not the recommended USDA canning guidelines from the National Center of Home Food Preservation or something like that. Okay, this is not full rebel canning and this is not from the USDA. This is kind of, I'm merging the two and this is what makes sense to me. So you understand that? Now let me go ahead and tell you what I'm going to do. Right now we are at the rinsing stage. I have not drained this water. You saw the beans and I just added water to them just to cover them up about an inch or so. And to rinse them, I take my hands in the beans and kind of rub them, squeeze them together amongst themselves, okay? The reason I do that is because it helps to loosen any of the dirt that's on the beans. Also, I just use warm water. I don't use hot water or cold water. I just use like really nice lukewarm water. Okay, so I squeeze them against themselves. It helps to loosen up the dirt that might be on the beans, plus anything else that could be on the beans, just germs from people handling them or, anything. Residue from any equipment that was used to shell them out and process them. It just helps to get rid of all that. Second thing that it does is any skin that is loose around the bean, by doing that, it helps to loosen up the skin even more. And you can see here's some of the skin peeling up. But now what I'll do is I will let these beans soak for about an hour as they are. And during that hour, any loose skin will come up, it'll float to the surface. Any beans that aren't quite perfect, that might be bad, they'll also float to the surface, and I will remove those beans and those skins and all those pieces. But during that hour, I'll just go ahead and just run my finger through each of the bowls, in case any skin is like trapped down under the weight of the bean. If you watch people canning dry beans, you might see that they just literally take the dry beans, stick them in a canning jar, pour water over them, and can them. But to me, they're not cleaning their beans like this. I feel that by doing this and then draining off all this water and then rinsing them, I feel I am removing a lot more of the dirt and all that stuff that we don't want to eat on our spoon when we, consume the beans. So that's one thing that is different from the much quicker way of literally just putting the dry beans in a jar, covering with water, and straight canning. Okay, so we're going to rinse this water, and when we rinse this, we are rinsing away all the dirt, all the excess dirt and germs and other unwanted impurities. Also, we are rinsing away any of the skins that are floating to the surface. Sometimes you'll have quite a few skins on the surface, and when you go through all the work of canning your beans, you want to actually be eating the beans. You don't want to have the bulk of your can be a bunch of skins. It's been 45 minutes since these beans have been soaking, and I want to take a moment and talk about another thing that I'm doing different than what those two paths I mentioned in the beginning of the video do. The USDA guidelines are that you let the beans soak like basically overnight. Depending on the variety of the bean, it can be letting it soak for 5 or 8 hours, for 12 or 18 hours. Okay, so the recommended guidelines are letting them soak for several hours. Then you drain the liquid, and then you add more water, you add fresh water, and then you're supposed to let them boil for, I think it's like 30 minutes before you can them. So that's what the USDA or the experts say to do. Now, the people that do it much quicker, where they just put the dry beans straight into the jar, fill with water, and can, obviously they bypass that entire soaking and par cooking process. I believe the reason they bypass it is pretty obvious because your pressure canner does the cooking. So in order to get your beans fully cooked, I think their quicker route makes sense because, like I said, the pressure canner does the cooking. Now, but what I have decided to do is I have decided to go ahead and boil the beans for 10 minutes before putting them in my jars. So again, I'm not going on either path, okay? I'm going to boil these for 10 minutes. I'm going to drain off the soaking water, rinse the beans, add fresh water, and I'm going to boil them for 10 minutes. Now, you might wonder, why would I do that? Okay, the reason is because beans, all beans, they contain something that can cause your stomach and your digestive system to be in a lot of pain. Red kidney beans and white kidney beans especially, they have very high levels of a type of lectin called, and I will insert the long name of that phytohemagglutinin, or however you say it. I will insert that long name of that specific type of lectin that causes a lot of gastrointestinal distress. Okay, so the idea is that by soaking the beans, you are removing some of that potential toxicity. And it's also by boiling the beans, during the boiling process, more of that toxicity comes out. Now, the reason that I decided to go ahead and boil them some, just for 10 minutes, is to go ahead and get out some more of that toxicity. But after I boil them for 10 minutes, I am going to strain off that boiled water. And then when I go to can them, I will be using fresh water. So the people that simply put the dry beans in their jar, add water, and can, they are not soaking them in water to remove some of that harmful lectin. And they are not boiling them and then draining that off as well to remove even more of that lectin. Now, I will say I do not 100% fully understand this whole lectin and that long word I'll put up here in the video again. I don't fully understand that whole process. I haven't done a lot of research on it. So this is just what makes sense to me. And the reason I'm doing a small batch of each is because I'm testing my theory here. And again, when you're pressure canning it, it's supposed to kill any of those harmful toxins anyway. And even if the pressure canner does kill it, I would rather not ingest it. So that's why I want to get out as much in a short amount of time as I can. That way it's less that I actually take in. So again, this is just my test. Okay, so time got away from me. It has actually been 1 hour and 15 minutes now that the beans have been soaking. And during that time, I did come and I did this a couple times. Like I said in the video, for any, for any skins or bad pieces to come up. And surprisingly, nothing came up. So let's go ahead and see if they've softened any. The inside is still really hard, of course, but the skin is definitely loosening up. Let's look at the pinto beans. So those were black beans. And the pinto beans, nothing has floated to the surface either, which is surprising. I always have something float to the surface on pinto beans and the navy beans, but nothing today. And they are still hard inside, but the skin is loosening up as well. You can see that. You can see how the water is dirty looking. It's dingy. So this is another reason why I would prefer to soak them so I can rinse out all this debris. Now, I did have a bowl that was too small, and I knew it was too small, but I was fine with it because I wanted a glass bowl. So here we are. And you can see that these navy beans, they absorbed all the water we had, and they could obviously use some more. They're the softest of the three. They're soft enough for me to split in half, and you can see the skin came off. Okay, but of course they are nowhere near being soft enough to eat. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain off all the water and rinse the beans, and I'll be right back. So I drained off all the water from these beans, and I rinsed them under cold running water as well. Now, I just want you to go ahead and hear that they are still firm. They're not mushy. Hear that? Those are the black beans, pinto beans. And then you probably can't hear the noise of the white beans because it's really full, so I'll put them over here. So you can see that they are still firm, even though they are the softest of the three. I have 2 pressure canners, but today I'm going to use my 9-pint pressure canner. Sometimes I can only get 8 pints in that pressure canner and sometimes 9. So I went ahead and I decided to do 3 pints of each type of bean. If I have leftover beans, that is just fine. It's always best to, end up with more than not enough, especially when it comes to canning because of all the time, and work you put into it. Now, what I would normally do is I would take my large pressure canner and just pressure can nothing but pinto beans or nothing but chili beans instead of doing this. But again, because I'm doing a little experiment to test my theory, I wanted to do just a few jars of each variety the same way, same time, just to see what we thought and to see if there was a difference between these 3 once they're pressure canned. I am hoping that it'll be great and they will not be mushy. Okay, so now that we have them drained and rinsed, now what we're going to do is we're going to boil them for 5 minutes. So over here on the stove, I have 3 pots of water, and the 2 bigger burners, they are at a rolling boil, and a rolling boil is when the water just boils hard like that, and it doesn't stop boiling when it's stirred. So you can see it's still boiling. I'm going to put the camera down and get my beans in this boiling water. And as soon as I put the beans in the water, it'll stop boiling, but I'm going to wait for it to come back up to a boil, and then I will time it for 5 minutes. You can see that by me putting those beans in there, it stopped boiling. Okay, so again, I just wanted you to see that. But again, once it starts coming to a rolling boil again, then I will start the 5-minute timer. I have all 3 types of beans in. They are on the timer. They have their own timer, and they are boiling away, and they will boil for 5 minutes. During that 5 minutes, I will just stir a couple times because sometimes they might want to stick to the bottom a little bit, so you want to be sure that you keep them moving around. The timer for the navy beans went off, and they boiled for 5 minutes. So I strained them, I dumped the water out, and rinsed them off. Okay. I'm going to dump these 5-minute cooked beans back into this bowl, and I want you to hear that they're not mushy at all. They're still firm, and they make noise going into the glass. Hopefully you can hear that. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll drain and rinse the other cooked beans and put them back in their bowl. And but again, I just wanted to show you that what we have done so far has not made them mushy. Here are the beans, sorted, rinsed, soaked, boiled, drained, rinsed again. Okay, we're about ready to go ahead and put these in our jars and start canning them. But there are a couple things that I wanted to go ahead and mention. One, the first thing is, after sorting and rinsing them, you could go ahead and boil them and then let them soak. That's an option. The second thing I want to mention, for those of you that might feel uneasy about canning them this way and wondering if they really would be safe to eat this way, okay, think about this. Whenever you buy a bag of dry beans, I don't know if every brand of dried beans says this or not, but most often the bags of dried beans will say, let the beans soak overnight before cooking the next day, or it may say something like you can do a quick soak method where you boil the beans vigorously, like a rolling boil, for 2 minutes, and then allow them to set in that water for an hour. And then you drain that off, and then you go ahead and cook them how you want. So my thought is, if doing that method makes the beans safe to eat, then this method should absolutely more than make the beans safe to eat, because these are going to be pressure canned for 75 minutes. So if you think about it like that, maybe that'll help set your mind at ease a little bit on implementing this method or another method that might be a little bit different than what the USDA recommends or other experts. But again, with anything, always do your own research and learn all you can about it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get these in our jars and get everything ready. I have my beans in the jars, and you saw what they looked like after they were boiled. They were all still firm and still made noise as they fell back into the glass bowls they came from. So what I did with those beans is I took a half cup of those beans and a fourth cup of those beans, and I put each of that into each jar. They're not even quite halfway full. Like these black beans, they might be about a third full. The navy beans are probably closer to half full, but not quite. So now we're going to, you can add salt to these if you want to. Since these are pints, you can add half a teaspoon of salt, which I will do. And then you can also add any seasonings that you want. So if you want to add any taco seasoning to the pinto beans, ham or beef to the navy beans, or what else? You can maybe take like some molasses and ketchup and mustard and onions and add to any of these beans and make like a baked bean. The sky's the limit. You can go ahead and put your flavorings and your seasonings in now. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of salt to each pint jar. This is just pickling and canning salt. You can use plain table salt if you want, the non-iodized kind. You can also use the Redmond's real salt if you want, but we just use this. It's a lot cheaper than the Redmond's real salt. We're going to add water to these, so we're only going to add water up to 1 inch of headspace, which is just right here at this rim, right here. Let me get some more water. Now what you need to do is just take something and stir the beans around. You're not really going to have many air pockets and something this loose, but it's a good practice to go ahead and give it a quick stir. If you are new to canning, I do have a home canning playlist with all sorts of helpful information on like how to debubble, what fingertip tight is, all sorts of stuff like that. Because of that, I'm not going into detail on, things to look for, like checking your jars and all the little fine print like that. This video is just on basic canning dry beans and my theory on what I'm testing and why I'm thinking that way. Okay, so this is not an intro on canning 101, okay? All right, so like I said, we want to fill our water up to 1 inch of headspace, which is about the bottom of that ring, and on some of these it looks like I've gone too far. So let's go ahead and just give it a quick measure. So on this one, it is right at 1 inch of headspace. Let's see if you can see that. The little 1 inch mark, it just barely touches the water. And you can see the water is just barely under this big ring right here. This one is about a 1/4 inch too tall. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of the water out of a couple of these, and we'll go ahead and get them in the canner. Now that we adjusted some of the water levels, we're just going to put our lids on. And yes, you may notice I am reusing some lids. I have a video showing what I look for when I go to reuse lids. So the lids, they are all on and they are centered on the jar. Okay, now we're gonna put our bands on, and you just wanna go fingertip tight. So you don't crank down with your wrist, and again, I have a video on this. You just go to where the tips of your fingers is what puts it on, okay? So fingertip tight. Okay, so we got our 9 pints of our 3 different types of beans here in the canner. So we put our lid on and we locked it to the closed position. The 75-minute timer has gone off. So here they are in the canner, all processed. Let's go ahead and take them out. We got them out of the canner. You can see our water is still pretty clear. We are setting them on an elevated rack, and you can see that they are boiling inside still. This is normal. This is to be expected. We want to leave them sit untouched for about a day, but a minimum of 12 hours. You want to let them be perfectly still. Do not touch them. You want them to cool completely on their own. They are very lovely, the colors. It is the next day. All of the jars have sealed. Now we need to take the bands off, clean the jars up, and label them. The bands are taken off the jars, they are wiped down, and they are labeled with what kind of bean they are, the year. And you can see I just added another line on each jar showing how many times these lids have been reused. So some lids have been reused twice, and some lids have been reused 3 times. Again, I have a video on reusing lids. And I also have a video on how to check and test your seals, so you can watch that. But you did see that I pushed this, and the other thing you can do is lift up like this to make sure that the lids stay on. And you can see it filled the jars about just barely over half full. Now let's open one jar of each and see the texture of them. I just opened up a jar of the navy beans that we canned. Let's go ahead and drain the juice out. Right. And I'm keeping the juice. And these beans that I'm going to be opening, 1 can of each, I'll probably just turn them into a 3-bean soup of some kind. Okay, so first, let's see if we can pick up, right. First, let's see if we can use a fork and pick up the bean. Looky there, you can pick it up. Okay, now I'm going to use the fork and mash it. That's nice. Now I'm going to taste it and see if it's creamy. That has a really nice flavor. Not salty, but that half a teaspoon of salt in each pint, that really tastes good. I don't even like beans. Let's try another one. Yes, that texture is perfect, absolutely perfect. Let me try one that looks a little softer. Still great. Now we just opened a jar of the black beans, and we got them here in the strainer basket, and let's try one of these. We can pick it up on the fork too. See if we can mash it. It mashes nice. It looks a little dry though. It's fully cooked, but it's not as creamy as the navy beans. But I do expect that because the navy beans, they always, in my experience, always soften up a lot faster than any other bean. Let's try another one. Okay, that one's really creamy, or much softer. Yep. Here's one. Even though you can see how soft it is straight out of the jar, it still picks up on a fork and it mashes really easy. Let's go ahead and taste it. Nice and creamy. And the skin is nice too. All right, let's get this back in the jar. We just opened a jar of the pinto beans. Let's go ahead and get them strained out in here. Okay, the pinto beans, they look obviously the most firm, but like I said towards the beginning of the video, this is my experience with pinto beans. They always take longer for me to, they always take longer to soften than any other bean I've tried. So let's try these. Okay. Goes on a fork easy. Mashes nice. Let's give it a taste. It is very nice as well. Okay, so none of these beans are mushy out of the jar. They all hold their shape on the fork. They mash with the back of the fork, and when you put them in your mouth, they are nice and smooth and creamy. So this is a win. So I've been dumping the beans and their juices back into the jar, and then I'm putting another lid on them, and they will go in the refrigerator. So you just want to make sure that you do that once you open them, that you store them in the fridge and use them within the next couple days. One thing I failed to show you, but I wanted to show you, when I was putting the broth back in the navy bean jar, the broth, as I was pouring it, it looked really nice. It was not watery at all. It was nice and thick and had a nice viscosity to it. I wanted to point that out because in case you were thinking, well, with her soaking the beans and dumping that water, with her boiling the beans and dumping that water, and then adding fresh water to can them, her beans might be really watery. I just wanted to let you know they are not watery at all. And now the navy beans are much more, the juice is much more thick or nice than these pinto beans, but I'm sure you can still get the idea if you watch the juice from the pinto beans. See that viscosity to it? It's really nice. Okay. Again, thanks for watching.